There are 7 deadly sins: sloth, pride, envy, wrath, gluttony, lust, and greed. And while you'd expect those to show up in movie villains or comic book bad guys, the truth is, real-life history isn't so pure either. In fact, if you look close enough, you'll find that every one of these sins has taken a seat in the Oval Office. Let's start off with the easiest sin to spot: sloth. Sloth is laziness, plain and simple, a reluctance to work or make an effort. And no one fits that mold better than Warren G. Harding. This man quite literally ran for president from his front porch. Not even a metaphor. He'd sit outside in a rocking chair while others ran his campaign for him, and once he got elected, he basically kept that same energy. Harding's presidency was less about leading the nation and more about staying out of the way. He let his buddies, the Ohio gang, run wild with corruption, scandals, and backroom deals, while he focused on poker nights and whiskey during Prohibition, mind you. He signed bills he didn't read and was so checked out that it's almost impressive how little he actually did. Harding didn't make mistakes because he was trying and failed. He made mistakes because he wasn't even trying. If there's a president who embodied doing the absolute bare minimum while in the highest office in the country, it's this guy. But while Harding was comfortable coasting and doing nothing, the next president on this list had the complete opposite problem. He did everything and made sure everyone knew it. Pride is all about ego, thinking you're the smartest person in every room, and needing the world to bow to your greatness. Lyndon B. Johnson didn't just have pride, he weaponized it. This was a man who demanded respect in the most over-the-top ways possible. If he wanted your vote in Congress, he wouldn't ask politely. He'd get 2 inches from your face and intimidate it out of you. The Johnson treatment was basically psychological warfare in a suit. Now, to be fair, he got a lot done. Civil Rights Act, Medicare, the Great Society. But you better believe he wanted full credit. LBJ didn't want to be a great president. He wanted to be the great president. And if you didn't acknowledge that, you were either irrelevant or in his way. He didn't take a backseat to anyone, especially not JFK, who he was constantly compared to. In fact, that inferiority complex is what makes the next sin so interesting. Because while LBJ demanded admiration, the next president on this list spent his whole career wishing he got it. Envy is wanting what someone else has, whether that's power, popularity, or praise. And John Adams spent most of his life watching others get the spotlight while he stood in the wings. He was a brilliant thinker, an essential figure in the founding of the country, and still he was always second. Second president, second choice, second favorite. He was vice president to George Washington and he hated it. Called the job the most insignificant office ever invented. He wanted the respect that Washington got, the coolness that Jefferson had, and the legacy he felt he deserved. But instead, he got constant comparison and eventual political exile. Even after his presidency, Adams wrote thousands of letters defending his record, basically arguing with history itself. That hunger to be recognized, that bitterness about being overlooked. It wasn't ambition anymore, it was envy. And it followed him to the grave. But while Adams internalized that resentment, the next guy didn't keep it in. He let his rage explode and took the whole country down with him in the process. Wrath is uncontrolled anger, grudge-holding, paranoia, and burning everything around you because you can't let it go. And if that doesn't describe Richard Nixon, nothing does. That was a president who didn't just fight enemies, he created them. He made enemy lists, wiretapped journalists, and weaponized the government against anyone who crossed him. He wasn't content with winning, he wanted to destroy anyone in his path. Nixon saw politics as combat, and once he got into power, he became obsessed with loyalty and vengeance. That's what led to the Watergate scandal. That's what caused the cover-up. And that's what made him the only president to ever resign in disgrace. His presidency didn't fall because of bad luck. It fell because he let his wrath run the show. But while Nixon let anger drive him to destruction, the next president on this list let something else control him: indulgence. Not in rage, but in appetite. Gluttony is the sin of excess, over-consuming to the point of waste. And let's be honest, if there's one presidential name forever tied to overindulgence, it's William Howard Taft. Now, yeah, we all know the bathtub story. Whether it's true or not, it's iconic. But Taft's gluttony wasn't just physical, it was lifestyle. He lived large in every sense. Constant fine dining, custom-tailored everything. Personal luxuries that screamed, "I want more." Even as president, he was more interested in creature comforts than pushing bold agendas. His energy was less commander-in-chief and more vacation mode permanently activated. He wanted the position, but not necessarily the pressure. Where Nixon drowned in fury, Taft sank in comfort. But the next president, he wasn't chasing food or power or respect. He was chasing temptation, and he rarely said no. Lust is intense desire. It's craving something so badly that you ignore the risks and act on impulse. And John F. Kennedy practically lived his entire adult life inside that temptation. He was young, charismatic, and smooth, but behind the polished speeches and press appearances, JFK had a reckless private life. Affairs with interns, celebrities, and possibly even spies. He didn't just flirt with danger, he invited it over. He once said he needed frequent affairs to avoid migraines. That wasn't a joke, that was just his operating system. Even the Secret Service had code words for when he had company at the White House. JFK's lust wasn't just physical, it was psychological. He craved excitement, adrenaline, the high of being wanted. It didn't matter if it was risky or reckless, he wanted it anyway. But while Kennedy was consumed by lust, the next president was consumed by something even harder to satisfy: the endless hunger for more. Greed is the insatiable desire for wealth, status, or control. And whether you love him or hate him, there is no modern president who represents greed more than Donald Trump. Before he ever stepped into politics, he was a walking brand. Gold-plated everything, his name on buildings, steaks, even bottled water. And once he got into the White House, it felt more like a business expansion than a presidency. He promoted his own properties, pushed his own narrative, and treated media coverage like profit margins. Every rally, every headline, every executive order, it was all part of the brand. Greed doesn't always look like theft. Sometimes it just looks like never having enough. Not enough attention, not enough power, not enough control. That's the energy Trump brought to the Oval Office. And it's what puts him dead center in the sin of greed.